Morning everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to paint 3 little cloud studies similar to this one in acrylic paint. The things you'll need are a piece of acrylic paper or a canvas. You can paint onto watercolour paper but not cartridge paper. Lots and lots of different brushes, mainly round brushes. The reason for that I'll explain later. And then you want a palette with a large blob of white acrylic on it, and then a few other colours. So I've got some grey, I've got some raw sienna, and then on the other half of my cracked plate there's a bit of red, some orange, pink, purple, blue, black. So just have a range of colours squirted out. Don't squirt out too much paint because you might not use it all, and a few rags just to wipe off excess paint. I've also got some water for washing my brushes and some water for cleaning my for mixing my colours. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, I undercoated it. I put masking tape around the outside, split it into 4 sections so that we can do 3 small studies. I've done one here already. The reason being is that it's better to start this sort of thing on a small scale, because you'll find that if you do a large canvas straight away, you'll find that you get yourself into a bit of a mess. So have a go on a very small scale using small brushes, and then just build up slowly the size of your work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the white. I've got a whole pot full here of brushes that I use for acrylic paint, and these are sort of old watercolour brushes and some acrylic brushes. The difference between them is they're generally white in the acrylic and brown for watercolour. But for small scale I find that I use watercolour brushes quite a lot, but just make sure that you wash them off really well afterwards. So I'm just going to take up some white and I'm going to put the white, I'm just making this up, so just put the white down. I'm not using very much water in this white paint because my white paint is quite fluid. It's just come straight out of the tube and it's a fairly new tube, so it's still quite loose. If you find you need to put some water into yours, then please do, but just be careful. I've said about this in the past that water is difficult to manage with acrylic paint, so the less water you use the better. It stops it from slipping around on your canvas. So what we're going to do now, like Bob Ross does, I'm sure you've been watching him on BBC, just soften the underside of your cloud, drag it down. Now with acrylic, I think he works quite a lot in oils, but with acrylic you'll find it dries off on you really quickly, so just be careful that it doesn't. This is one of the reasons for using small scale clouds for now, so that you don't panic and have paint drying off on you. So just soften in areas. You can leave some hard edges like this one here, but just soften those clouds up a little. Now with your brush that you put your white on with, take some of your colour. I'm going to use a bit of purple. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the raw sienna and a touch of white. So I've got some raw sienna, some purple and some white here. I'm just going to put it on the underside of the cloud here, like that. Nice colour, you can see that's a nice colour. Taking the same brush that I softened with, soften the bottom section first and then pop in and soften the top. like so. Okay. Next bit I'm going to do, I'm just going to put in a stronger tone of that colour, and we're going to leave that slightly harder than the one previous. So again, I've got raw sienna, purple and white. I'm just going to put that back in again, and I'm going to bring it up here. I'm just going to pop it like that, and I'm going to put some white in just above it like that. And then I'm going to take that brush again, the one that I softened the colour with, and I'm just going to dry it off underneath, getting rid of the excess colour like that. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to soften that in again. Just carefully pat. Now, if you find that your brush becomes clogged like this, then move the colour away and put it somewhere else, and then dry it off down here. So again, just gently pat that in like so. Now, underneath that, I'm going to put a second layer of cloud, and this cloud is going to have a slightly orange tinge to it. So I'm going to take the orange, I'm going to mix it with a little of the white, and we're going to come in and we're going to put this in front of those clouds that we've already painted. Again, vary the shapes that you're making, and there, like so. Lay the colour down with one brush, soften with another. So soften the underside like this, and then soften the top if you want to soften it. You might not want to soften it, you might like I quite like that shape there, so I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to leave pretty much all the rest as well, I think, like that. Okay, and then in front of that I'm going to put a slightly redder cloud. So this is going to be a little bit more dramatic than this one, and I'm just going to add the red into the orange and white mix that I mixed earlier. So that's my brush. You experiment with colours. It's up to you really what colours you use in your sky. I mean, you might have a sky to actually look at out of your window, and that obviously helps. But with little sort of test sketches like this, test paintings, you don't really need to have something in front of you. You can just make it up. It's really nice. It's a nice opportunity just to make it up for a change. So I'm going to take a clean brush now because I don't want too much of that yellow mixed in. So I'm just going to soften that down here. Actually, that brush is no good. Let me just take that brush that I just used then, was too soft. When you're blending, you need something that's got a little bit of rigidness to it. So just soften the bottom in and then come up and soften that top edge like that. You can drag it up into that cloud behind if you want to, like that. You find that because the paint underneath is slightly wet, that it will start to blend, but that's kind of what you're after, isn't it? So, and if you overblend, what you can do is just always add in more colour. So I'll just get rid of that side there. Okay, so on that red section, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to lighten up one side like this. So I'm just using white straight from the palette, put it down with one brush, soften the underside with the other like this, soften it in And really it's just a matter of repeating this exercise over and over until you're happy with the results. So just keep adding paint and softening, and just remember obviously that acrylic dries fast and therefore you want to work reasonably quickly. However, if it dries off too fast on you, then you can always paint another bit on top, so it's not a problem. So just again, just add in a little touch of white there. I'm just going to put a touch on this side too. I want to dry brush this just to sort of soften it down. Just take it up there like that. It's quite therapeutic doing this sort of miniature painting. The size of the work really helps, because you're not, well, for one, you're not wasting too much paint if you get it wrong, and two, you don't end up with loads and loads of excess canvases that you don't need. But the beauty of acrylic, again, like I said, is the fact that you can actually paint over it, so it's not as problematic as a watercolour. So again, take another brush, soften the base. I just added in a little bit of purple there because I wanted a slightly darker area coming in this section here. I'm going to take a little bit of it up into that cloud there and bring a bit of that cloud back. And then the final thing to do is to just bring out some darker sections. So I'm going to use a clean brush now. I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush. Let's have a look, what have I got in here? And I'm going to put some detail in. So with this bit, what you need to do is you need to add in some black or some Payne's grey or something like that, just to make the colour that you've just been using a little bit darker. And we're going to just darken up a couple of patches. So we'll put that bit in there like that. We're just going to bring that down into there. So we want some real darks, and you can even go in and put in some some black just down in that section there. I quite like that. And again, you can leave the edges hard, but if you would rather, then you can soften it in. Again, using a clean brush, just soften the undersides like that, and then go in and soften the top if you need to, like that. You might like it hard edged, but it's up to you. I'm going to just bring in a little bit more down here. Like that. Soften it in. Soften. Oops. Just put a little bit like that. You can also do the same with your white. So if you want to add some extra whites in, you can pick up a little bit of white and just put it back where you want it, just to highlight the tops of some of those clouds. Ooh, that brush. like so. Still very quiet outside, but I have noticed that there are a few more cars on the road, seemingly. Maybe some people are going back to work. I know that they've been given, some businesses have been given permission to go back. So again, I'm just softening in. Oh, I just picked up a bit of that colour, but that's quite nice actually. Softening in the underside of those marks that I just put down. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one and move on to another one. So let's repeat the exercise. So we start with the white paint. You don't necessarily have to use white, and I'm going to come down from this side this time. So into a big area of white. Yeah, so if you don't, obviously not all clouds are, well, they're not white, are they? They're a mixture of different colours, but if you want to start off with a pink or something like that, then go ahead. So in with the white, then take your softening brush and just pat that colour down, drag it into the rest of the body of the cloud. What you'll find is the more of these you do, the more natural the forms will become, and your eye will get used to seeing the clouds, especially if you're looking at the real thing, better. So try and do, like I said, do a few, and you should get better and better at this. There's lots of things to learn, like the amount of paint that you put down. That's one aspect. The types of brushes to use, that's another aspect. Mixing the paint. So even in these small studies, you're learning a lot very quickly. So now I'm going to pick up some, let's see, we did some red there. Let's use some orange. So I'm going to pick up some orange and I'm going to mix it with my white colour. And I'm not going to mix it too well. And I'm going to put in some orange up here. Now you can see there that I've actually got a bit of water on that brush, and you can see that the colour lays down a little bit more transparent than it should. So I'm going to put a little bit of orange there, and then I'm going to put a bit of orange there, and then a touch down here. And then I'm going to take my softening brush. Let's have a see, that one will do it. So like I said, have a big pot of brushes available to you. So just move into that colour, soften it in until it starts drying off on your brush. Soften it into the rest of the cloud form, away from the edges, like that. And then once you've got the underside softened in, then you can start thinking about softening the top edges. So some of them can be really soft, and some of them can be left like that. So I'll just draw that down there. Draw that up there. Draw that into there. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to add a little bit of, let's see, we'll put some pink in now, seeing as I've got a blob of pink here and I haven't used it yet and it's starting to dry out. This is a very vibrant colour. So we mix a little bit of pink in there. I'm going to darken this section up here. bring it down into that area there and then finish, I think. Again, softening brush, just soften the cloud into the bottom areas like that. And then if your brush is becoming clogged, put it away, pull out another brush. And we're going to use that to soften those reds into like that. Just put a touch down there. Okay, and now we're going to go into the darks again. So pick up a little bit of dark colour. So I've got a bit too much water on there. Didn't wipe off my brush when I washed it off. Wipe it off with a piece of material or and into your dark tones. So we're going to have a great big blue black cloud coming down this area here. I'm going to put a little bit of black into it because I want it to be fairly menacing. So again, get your paint on. I have a bit coming up there, I think. A bit down there. And then soften. Let's see what we got. I need a fairly decent size for this one. Okay, so again into that bottom area, soften in. And I'm going to wipe some of the paint off my brush to take it up further into this area here. Now the only thing you've got to be careful of when adding blue, especially if you've got yellow underneath or a yellow based. So if your brush gets clogged up, just wash it off and then wipe it off on your rag and just start to soften those colours in. Yeah, so as I was just saying, the only problem with adding blue in is if you've got yellow underneath, you might end up with a bit of green in your painting. So just be aware of that. If the yellow's been mixed with something else to make an orange or a red or whatever, an orange red, then it won't mix into a green. Well, it shouldn't mix into a green. But if you've got yellow underneath, just be careful. So again, I'm just softening those edges into. Going to do that one before it dries off. So soften those edges in like that. Okay. So like I said, the last thing to do is to just, well, we've got some dark patches here already, but if you want to put in some more defined patches of colour, once you've done your blending section, you can come back in and just add some extra bits of colour just into certain areas. So this is just a little bit of white with a bit of yellow in it, and just add in, like I said, just blend down the underside of it. Just going to put a little touch of white just above here, just to bring out that edge and this edge here. Again, just soften it in to the underside and maybe a touch just here, like that. Okay, the final one is a pink one. I'm just going to take a large blob of white. Actually going to mix the paint on here. So just put the white down, pick up a touch of pink or something like that, add it in. You can mix this on the actual canvas itself. So you can see I've just got a pink tone, a little bit more pink, a little bit more white onto the canvas. The more paint you put on, the more time you'll have to play about with your clouds. So just be confident with the amount that you add in. And sometimes it's just nice to mix on the canvas like I've done here. Just get the paint on, get on with painting rather than thinking about the colours that you're mixing all the time. So directly underneath we're going to have a darker pink tone, so we'll just put that in here. I'm just picking up the pink as it is coming out of the tube. It's very bright, but I quite like it. So I'm just scraping off the excess here, and I'm just going to slowly blend that in to the clouds above like this. Just making very sort of nervous hand movements into the cloud above, like so, using some of the marks that I've made previously as inspiration. So I'm going to take that up on that edge there, just bring it down like so, soften that in there a bit. Try not to become too irregular with the marks that you're making. Twist the brush around in your hand and make different marks. So the marks you can make are sort of sweeps like this, sweep marks, or pat marks, where you're using more of the tip of the brush. Okay, there's a touch of orange. Well, no, actually what I'll do is I take a bit of red and just deepen up this colour down the bottom here. I'm not going to take it up too high because I quite like the idea that it's sort of just seeping in from the bottom there. Again, just be careful with controlling the amount of paint that you have on your brush. If you feel like it's getting out of control, wash the brush off, wipe it off, dry it, and then just pop back in and just start to soften. And again, if you've got too much colour on your brush, just take it off and start to soften again, like so. Okay, now at the bottom of this we're going to mix a dark red, so I'm going to take a little bit of red and I'm going to add some what have we got, some black into it. Now I just took a lot of water on my brush, so I'm just going to wipe a bit of that excess off and add more red. We've got a nice deep red cloud here coming up in front of this area here. It's going to go down into that bit there. So again, just drag it down. I'm going to take it up a bit higher actually. But again, think about the marks you're making with your brush. Drag it down. Getting rid of that brush now, and I'm going to take up another brush. I'll use this one, I think, that's now dry. that this is quite split, so just be careful with the splits on your brush because they will cause you issues. So again, just going to soften, 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 and then up into, let's see how well it behaves. If it leaves too many bits, I will, yeah, maybe use a different brush. Let's try this one. Yeah, so slightly smaller, a little bit more behaved, like that. Just soften those edges into, so they're not too harsh against that background white colour. Bring them down. If you pick up a little bit of white, it's quite good. You can bring it down into the cloud, because obviously it wouldn't just be a solid black colour. It would have darks and lights in it. That's quite sweet actually. Okay, so now we're going to just darken up areas. So I quite like that red pinky colour. So I'm just going to put in a little bit. I'm going to use a tiny bit of water for this because I want it to flow. I want the paint to flow well. So I'm just going to look carefully at where there's sections on my, where I've made certain types of marks where it would lend to having some darkness around it. So again, whoops, bit of pink. Just going to bring that up there. And then down into the back of that cloud there. Like that. Yep. So again, clean, dry brush. Just soften the underside like that. And then if you feel the need to, you can do the same up the top. Like that. There. Again, I'm going to use that almost black colour that I used for this section down here. I'm going to darken up an area just inside here, almost black, like this, just to give it an extra dimension. Take the dry brush, soften the underside, and then go in and soften the top side if you feel like you need it, like that. Now back to the white. Let's see. Yep, I did have some pink and white in there, but I'm going to just enhance a little bit of white here. So I'm just going to bring that down into that mark. Again, nice observation of where there are darks and lights and where this shape might need some highlight. So you're effectively putting the highlights back on the top of the clouds here. I'll just put a little dot there. Dry brush, that's if you've got any left. Dry brush it in like that. And really you can fiddle with this as much as you like. Put in as much or as little detail. If you like the brush marks, leave them there. If you want to smooth everything in like the Bob Ross does, then please do that. If you like the more sort of semi-abstract nature of your brush marks, then please leave them alone. Now ideally you would wait for this to dry off, but I'm just going to just pull off the main bits of masking, and it will just give you a sort of a more finished edge and allow you to see the little studies as they are on the paper. Oops. And they do make quite nice little sets, and you could always cut them out. Oops, let's take this top bit off first. You could always cut them out and put them onto cards or mount them in a little multi-frame. And there we have it. There's our 4 little cloud studies. I'm just going to move that just so that you can see. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so like I said, just work on a small piece of paper and make 4 or 5 or however many little cloud studies you want to make. But like I said, you'll learn so much just by completing 4 studies rather than doing 1 and messing it up. You can learn as you go. So have a go. You can look on the internet and try and download some pictures of clouds, or you can look directly out of your window and actually paint the clouds themselves. Experiment with a bit of colour mixing before you go. Make sure you've got plenty of clean water, rags and paintbrushes before you start, and just have fun with the clouds. They are beautiful forms and very sort of therapeutic to look at. If you fancy, you can go to my Facebook page. It's my students' Facebook page, which is Art Carmarthen Community Centre, and you can join that. And we have chats on Thursday mornings at 11 o'clock. You can join in. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube page and also to the Facebook page. And please don't be scared to leave comments or ask questions. I'll try my best to answer as many as I can. Okay, thanks for joining in again, and stay safe.